If you asked me a year ago, I would have told you my wife Emily was perfect, beautiful, smart, caring, the kind of woman any man would be lucky to have. We had a good life, a nice house, no money troubles, years of love and trust built between us. I thought we were unbreakable, but then little things started to change. She stayed late at work more often. Her phone, once left carelessly on the counter, was suddenly glued to her hand. She laughed at texts she wouldn't let me see. At first I ignored it. I told myself I was overthinking, that I was being paranoid. But paranoia doesn't leave lipstick stains on wine glasses that were never used at home. It doesn't make a woman come back from work trips smelling like cologne that isn't yours. So I started paying attention, and the moment I did, the truth hit me like a freight train. Emily was cheating. And worse, she thought she was upgrading. But the joke was on her, because the man she threw everything away for, he was about to ruin her life in ways she never saw coming. The first time I really noticed something was off. It was small, insignificant even. Emily had always been affectionate, morning kisses, random texts, little moments that made me feel like the luckiest guy in the world. But one day she just stopped. No more "I love you" before bed. No more holding my hand when we walked together. When I kissed her goodbye before work, she barely leaned in. I told myself she was just stressed. Work had been rough for her lately. At least that's what she claimed. More late nights, more urgent projects that kept her glued to her laptop. But then came the phone changes. She used to leave it lying around, unlocked, without a second thought. Now, it was always face down, always on silent, and when I did catch a glimpse of the screen, it was full of notifications from a name I didn't recognize. Mark. A coworker, she told me. Just a friend. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to. But deep down something told me, this wasn't nothing. This was the beginning of something much, much worse. And I was right. At first I tried to ignore it, to brush it off as paranoia. But paranoia doesn't make a wife start smiling at her phone like a teenager in love. It doesn't make her laugh at texts she refuses to share. And it sure as hell doesn't make her lie straight to my face. One night, Emily came home late. Again. She smelled like perfume, but not her usual kind. Something stronger, something new. Late meeting, she said, kicking off her heels. Ran over time. I forced a smile. Where'd you eat? She hesitated. Just for a second. But it was there. Ah, office takeout. Bullshit. I had already checked her office's late-night food policy. No deliveries past 7 p.m. And she had come home at nearly midnight. Still, I said nothing. Not yet. Instead, I nodded, kissed her cheek, and acted like the fool she thought I was. Because if she wanted to play this game, I was going to let her, and when the time was right, I'd make sure she lost. The next few weeks, I played my role perfectly. The trusting husband, the oblivious fool. I didn't question the late nights. I didn't ask about the extra hours at work. I even pretended not to notice when she suddenly started dressing nicer, tighter skirts, more makeup, perfume that wasn't for me. But behind the scenes, I was collecting everything. Every lie, every excuse, every tiny inconsistency. Like how she claimed to be exhausted after work, but her social media showed her out at bars with him. Mark. The coworker. The just a friend. Or how she'd come home claiming to have eaten, but the fridge was still stocked with the meal I had cooked for her. She was slipping. And the more confident she got in her deception, the more reckless she became. I started leaving small tests, asking about her schedule, bringing up old memories, seeing if she even remembered the life we had built together. And every time she stumbled, every time she hesitated, my suspicions hardened into certainty. Emily wasn't just cheating. She was getting ready to leave me. I needed proof. Real, undeniable proof. So, I did something I never thought I'd have to do. I checked her phone. Emily was in the shower, humming some song like she didn't have a care in the world. Her phone was charging on her nightstand, unlocked. A rare mistake. My hands didn't even shake as I picked it up. I already knew what I was going to find, and I was right. Mark, I miss you already. Last night was amazing. Emily, me too. Wish I was with you right now. Mark, soon babe. Just a little longer. I scrolled. My stomach twisted, but I kept going. Dozens of messages, photos, plans. She wasn't just cheating, she was planning her escape. I just have to figure out how to tell Ethan. I don't want to hurt him. I stared at that message, jaw clenched. She doesn't want to hurt me. What a joke. She had already destroyed everything. The shower turned off. I put the phone back exactly as it was and walked out of the room, my face unreadable. Emily had no idea I knew, and I wasn't about to stop her. No, I was going to let her ruin herself. From that moment on, I had a choice. I could confront her, scream, demand answers. But what would that do? She'd deny, gaslight, twist everything back onto me, and worst of all, she'd leave before I was ready. So instead I smiled. I kissed her good morning. I asked about her day. I played the same loyal, trusting husband she thought I was. And every time she lied to my face, I nodded along like I believed her. Late meeting again. Yeah, sorry babe. It's just been so busy. Who keeps texting you? Oh, just work stuff. Nothing important. She had no idea that every text she sent, every excuse she made, was just more rope she was giving herself to hang with. But the best part, she thought she was winning. She smiled more, relaxed around me, confident that I hadn't caught on. Meanwhile, she spent more and more time, working late, sneaking off with Mark, preparing to leave me for him. And I let her, because once she walked out that door, there would be no coming back. The deeper she fell into her affair, the sloppier she got. At first Emily was careful. She had excuses lined up, explanations rehearsed. But as the weeks passed, she got too comfortable, too confident. She stopped hiding her smiles when she texted. She didn't notice how often she mentioned Mark's name, how easily it slipped into conversation. And then came the ultimate mistake. One night, she came home late again. Same routine, same lie. Work ran late. But this time, she forgot something. As she walked past me, I caught a glimpse of red lace peeking out from under her blouse. Lingerie. Emily never wore lingerie to work. Not for boring office meetings. Not for me. I almost laughed. She wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. But I kept my expression neutral, nodded, and said, "Long night." She hesitated. Just for a second. Then smiled. Yeah, exhausting. I bet it was. I let her walk past me, let her believe she was still in control, because soon, she was going to realize just how wrong she was. At this point, Emily wasn't even living in reality. She still came home to me, still slept in our bed, still acted like my loving wife. But in her mind, she was already halfway out the door. She thought she was making a clean break, that Mark was her future, that once she left, she'd be happier. She had no idea what was coming. One night, I casually asked, "So, how's Mark?" She froze, just for a second. Then she forced a laugh. "Mark? Oh, he's fine, I guess." "Why?" I shrugged. "You mention him a lot." "Just curious," she smiled, but her fingers gripped her wineglass a little too tight. She was nervous. Good. She thought she was the one pulling the strings, but I was leading her exactly where I wanted. I had already prepared everything, gathered every message, every call log, every hotel receipt she thought I'd never see. She thought she was about to start a new life. But really, she was about to destroy her own. Emily had no idea, but her perfect plan was already falling apart. She thought she was carefully balancing both lives. Me at home, Mark on the side, but cracks were starting to show. One night, as she scrolled through her phone on the couch, I noticed her expression shift. Just for a second, a flicker of something annoyance. Frustration. She sighed. put her phone down and rubbed her temples. "Rough day?" I asked, pretending to be the caring husband. She hesitated. "Yeah, work is just a lot right now." Lie. I had already seen the messages. Mark was struggling. Something about money, about needing more time, about how things weren't going as smoothly as they had planned. Emily didn't realize it yet, but she was betting on the wrong man. And soon, she'd have nothing left. I almost felt bad for her. Almost. Because this wasn't just karma. This was justice. The fantasy Emily had built was starting to crumble. She didn't notice, but I saw it. The little changes. The frustration creeping into her voice when she texted. The way her late nights were getting shorter. The arguments she tried to hide. Mark wasn't the Prince Charming she had imagined. One night, while she was in the shower, I checked her phone again. "Mark, I just need a little more time. Things are tight right now. Emily, you said that last week. I can't keep doing this. Mark, what do you want me to do?" "I'm trying." I smirked. Trying to do what support a new life when he could barely afford his own. Emily thought she was trading up, leaving a stable life for something better. But instead she was realizing the truth. She had bet everything on a man who had nothing. And soon, she'd have nothing too. Emily was getting desperate. I could see it in the way she clung to her phone. The way she checked for messages every 5 minutes. She wasn't laughing at Mark's texts anymore. She was waiting for them. One night, she barely touched her dinner, just sat there pushing food around her plate, lost in thought. "Something wrong?" I asked. She blinked, startled, then forced a smile. "No, just tired." Lies. She was starting to realize that her perfect escape plan wasn't so perfect after all. Mark was struggling. He wasn't the exciting, successful man she thought he was. And now, the future she had imagined. Leaving me, running off with him, living some thrilling new life, was slipping through her fingers. She thought she had won, that she had played me for a fool and was walking away on top. But now she was realizing the truth. She wasn't leaving me. She was running straight into ruin, and I was going to enjoy watching every second of it. Emily was unraveling, and it was beautiful to watch. She tried to keep up the act, smiling, pretending everything was fine, but she couldn't hide the tension in her shoulders, the way her fingers tightened around her phone every time she checked it. Mark wasn't giving her what she wanted. One night, after she thought I was asleep, I heard her whispering on the phone. Her voice was low but sharp, her frustration clear. "I can't just wait forever, Mark. I left everything for you." A pause. Then more desperate. "You promised me." I smirked in the darkness. She had thrown away a stable life, a loyal husband, everything for a man who couldn't even afford to take her out to dinner. And now, she was stuck. She couldn't crawl back to me. That bridge was burned. And Mark, he was already fading away. She thought she was starting a brand new life, but in reality, she was losing everything. And I wasn't going to lift a finger to save her. Emily was officially in damage control mode. She started staying home more, cooking dinner, asking about my day, like she suddenly remembered how to be a wife. It was pathetic. She wasn't doing it out of love. She was doing it because her escape plan had failed. Mark wasn't the man she thought he was. He wasn't sweeping her off her feet, wasn't saving her from the life she was so desperate to leave. And worst of all, he was pulling away. I saw the messages. "Emily, you're barely talking to me. What's going on?" "Mark, I'm just stressed. Things are complicated right now. Emily, you said we'd be together, that we'd start fresh." "Mark, I need time." Time. Emily didn't have time. She had burned her bridges, lied, cheated, ruined the life she had with me, all for a fantasy that was slipping through her fingers. And now, she was realizing that she was the one being left behind. Emily was losing control and she knew it. The texts became more frantic. The phone calls lasted longer. She stayed up late, pacing the bedroom, whispering arguments into her phone. She thought I was asleep, but I heard everything. "Mark, you promised me. I left my whole life behind for this." A pause, then more desperate. "What do you mean you're not sure anymore?" I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. She had thrown away a stable marriage, a home, a future for a man who couldn't even commit to his own lies. And now, reality was hitting hard. She tried to act normal around me, but I saw the cracks, the forced smiles, the way her hands trembled when she poured her coffee. She was terrified, not just because Mark was slipping away, but because she knew deep down there was no way back. She had made her choice, and now she was going to live with it. Emily was trapped, and she knew it. Her fairy tale was over. The man she betrayed me for was pulling away, and the life she thought she was escaping to, it didn't exist. She started getting quieter. No more fake smiles, no more forced conversation. She barely touched her phone anymore, probably because she was afraid of what she wouldn't see. One evening, I watched as she typed out a message, then deleted it, typed again, deleted. Finally, she sent it. "Emily, can we talk?" No response. 10 minutes passed, then 30, then an hour. She kept checking, her expression turning from hope to frustration to quiet panic. Mark wasn't answering. I sipped my coffee, pretending not to notice. She had spent months sneaking around, lying, throwing away everything we built together. And now she was sitting across from the man she betrayed, pretending everything was fine, while the man she chose didn't even care enough to reply. I had waited for this moment, and it was delicious. Emily's phone stayed silent, no response from Mark, no explanation, nothing. And with every passing hour, her panic grew. She barely spoke during dinner, just sat there, lost in thought, picking at her food like someone with no appetite, like someone realizing too late that she had made the worst mistake of her life. I almost wanted to say something like, "Waiting for someone," or "Not so fun when they ignore you, huh?" But I didn't, because the silence was louder than anything I could have said. She was breaking all on her own. Later that night, I watched as she checked her phone one last time before bed. Still nothing. She sighed, put it down, and rolled onto her side, facing away from me. For the first time in months, I think she finally understood what it felt like to be alone. And I was just getting started. Emily was spiraling. Mark had gone completely silent. No texts, no calls, no excuses. Just gone. And now, for the first time, she had to sit with the consequences of her own choices. She wasn't laughing anymore. No secret smirks, no stolen glances at her phone. Just tension, thick, suffocating, inescapable. I could tell she wanted to say something. She'd open her mouth, hesitate, then close it again. But what could she say? She had chosen this. One evening as I sat on the couch, she finally broke the silence. "Hey," she said softly, "do you want to go out this weekend? Maybe grab dinner?" I almost laughed. This was it. Her last attempt. Trying to reconnect. Trying to pretend like she hadn't burned it all to the ground. But I wasn't going to make this easy for her. I shrugged. "I've got plans." The flicker of hope in her eyes. Gone. She had spent months pushing me away. Now she was the one on the outside looking in. Emily was drowning in regret. She thought she had it all figured out, sneak around, trade me in for someone better, and start fresh. But now, she was realizing she had nothing. Mark was gone. He had used her, made empty promises, then disappeared the moment things got complicated. And me, I had no interest in saving her. She tried again the next night. A weak attempt at small talk. "How was your day?" I barely looked up from my laptop. "Fine." She waited, hoping I'd ask about hers, that I'd throw her some kind of lifeline. I didn't. I let her sit in the silence, let her feel the weight of what she'd done. Because the truth was, there was no fixing this, no undoing it. She had spent so much time chasing something better. Now she was left with nothing at all. And I wanted her to feel every second of it. Emily couldn't take it anymore. The silence, the distance, the realization that she had ruined everything. It was eating her alive. One night, as I was about to head to bed, she finally cracked. "Can we talk?" Her voice was small, uncertain. I paused, looking at her. "About what?" She swallowed hard. "Us." I almost laughed. Us. There was no us anymore. But I played along. Sat down, watched as she struggled to find the right words. I know I messed up, she finally whispered. I don't want to lose you. Too late for that. She was waiting for me to comfort her, to tell her we could fix things, that I still loved her. But I just leaned back and crossed my arms. Why now? She blinked. What? You didn't care about losing me before. I said. So why now? Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Because she knew the answer. She wasn't sorry because she loved. She was sorry because she had nowhere else to go. And that wasn't my problem. Emily was desperate, but I wasn't buying it. She wanted me to believe she was sorry, that she had seen the light, that she finally understood what she had done. But I knew the truth. She wasn't sorry for betraying me. She was sorry that her backup plan had failed. Maybe we could try again, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I let out a short laugh. Try what again? Our marriage, she said quickly. I stared at her, letting the silence stretch, letting her squirm. She thought she could manipulate me, just like she had before. Thought she could bat her eyes, say the right words, and make me forget everything. Not this time. I don't think so, I said, standing up. You already made your choice. Her face fell. But, no. I cut her off. You don't get to destroy something and then beg for it back when things don't work out. For the first time, real fear flashed in her eyes. She had played her game, and she had lost. Emily was out of moves. She had cheated, lied, walked away from a loyal husband for a man who didn't even stick around. And now, she had nothing. I could see the panic setting in, the way her hands fidgeted, her eyes darting, looking for some way out, some last shred of hope. But there was none. I grabbed my jacket, heading for the door. She stood up quickly. Where are you going? I smirked. Out. Her lips parted like she wanted to argue, but what could she say? She had spent months making me feel like I wasn't enough, like she had better options. But now, as she stood there, watching me walk away, I knew she finally understood. She was the one who wasn't enough. And the best part, she had no one to blame but herself. Emily was unraveling, and I could see every crack forming in real time. She had spent so long thinking she had control, that she could leave me upgrade to someone better, and never face the consequences. But now she was watching the life she chose crumble before her eyes. She didn't even try to hide it anymore. The fake confidence, the forced smiles, all of it was gone. One night, I caught her staring at me while I worked on my laptop. What? I asked, barely looking up. She hesitated. Do you ever think about what we used to have? I closed my laptop and met her gaze. Not really. That was the moment it truly hit her. I wasn't her safety net anymore. She had burned that bridge, and there was no rebuilding it. She opened her mouth like she wanted to say something. Maybe to argue, maybe to beg. But then she stopped. Because deep down she already knew. This wasn't my loss. It was her. Emily was suffocating under the weight of her own decisions. She had gambled with our marriage, thrown away everything we built. And for what? A man who saw her as nothing more than a temporary distraction. She had no one now. One night, as I was heading to bed, she spoke up again. Do you hate me? Her voice was quiet, almost afraid. I stopped in the doorway, considering her words. Hate? No. That would mean I still cared enough to feel something. I met her gaze. I don't think about you enough to hate you. The way her face fell, I almost felt bad. Almost. She had spent so long believing she had the upper hand, that she could do whatever she wanted, and I'd always be there, waiting, willing to take her back. But now, she was realizing the truth. She wasn't the one leaving me behind. I was the one leaving her, and she had to live with that. Emily was a shell of the woman she used to be. The arrogance, the smugness, the certainty that she had outsmarted me. It was all gone. Now, she just looked lost. But I didn't care. She had made her bed, and no amount of regret was going to change the fact. that she was the one who burned this marriage to the ground. One night, she tried again, a last pathetic attempt to claw her way back. "I know I messed up," she whispered, "but people make mistakes, right?" I let out a short laugh. "This wasn't a mistake, Emily. It was a choice." Over and over again. She blinked, tears forming in her eyes. For the first time, I think she finally realized there was nothing she could say to fix this. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't heartbroken. I was just done. And that scared her more than anything. Emily was desperate. She knew this was it. Her last chance to convince me. To make me forget. To rewrite history in her favor. But I wasn't playing along. She cornered me in the kitchen one morning. Eyes red. Voice trembling. "We can fix this. I know we can." I took a slow sip of my coffee before answering. "Fix what exactly?" She hesitated. "Us." I chuckled, shaking my head. "There is no us, Emily." She swallowed hard, trying to hold back tears. "But no." I cut her off. "You don't get to betray me and then act like I'm the one who should clean up the mess." She stared at me, and for the first time, I saw it. Acceptance. She had lost. Mark was gone. I was done. And she had nothing left but the wreckage of her own choices. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door, leaving her standing there broken. She had spent so long thinking I was replaceable. But in the end, the only person who ended up replaced was her. Emily was finally alone. No Mark. No marriage. No backup plan. Just her. And the wreckage of her own making. I moved on. The moment the divorce papers were finalized, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I started focusing on myself. New routines. New people. A life without her shadow hanging over it. And Emily, she tried to stay in touch at first. Random texts. Weak attempts at small talk. Even a few late-night "I miss you" messages. I ignored them all. She had made it very clear who she was. I had no interest in giving her another chance to prove it. The last I heard, she tried reaching out to Mark again. He blocked. Now, she was exactly where she deserved to be, stuck in the consequences of her own choices. And me, I was free. Funny, isn't it? She thought she was upgrading, but in the end, she was the one who got left behind.